Hey everybody, I hope you're well. Happy Thursday. Oh my gosh, this is my first content-y related YouTube video, and I am just so excited to share stuff with you. Oh my God. And so today I'm going to talk about one of my secrets that I'm usually like thinking of, but I don't really talk about very often. So let's get to the video. But before you do, don't forget to click like, share, and subscribe. So basically, my secret I want to talk about today is my issue with communication. Now, you might think, oh my gosh, like he speaks all the time, like he's a professor. He writes for stuff. He goes on social media and he rants and raves and this and that. Yeah, I mean, sometimes, I think I'm my own harshest critic, but I don't think I always like get my message across. And, it's a challenge because I think in general, underlying this idea of not being able to get my message across sometimes, I think it sort of really highlights something vulnerable about me simply because I can't always realize like if my message is actually hitting or not. And I think in general, even the reason why I'm doing the channel is because I want to be heard and I want to be able to be understood and I want to be accepted for who I am. And I know like that struggle is real for lots of people where just who they are is just kind of an issue. But I mean, even who I am on so many levels, I mean, aside from being this sort of gay Pakistani person that sort of, goes on Instagram and takes his shirt off, I think that underneath that person is somebody that really just wants to be understood. But I want to talk about it today more from a professional level than really just my own personal level. And the reason I want to focus on this is because I want to talk about like some of the experiences I've had being a sociologist because when somebody says like, "Oh, well, you're a sociologist, like you're this educated person, blah blah blah," like it's weird because it's like I feel like at least for me, I think I've internalized this idea that like I constantly have to do things, and when I do them, I have to do them right. And it's like I can't always be that person. And and it's difficult because like even when I'm writing, like I'm constantly looking at multiple drafts of a million things, and I'm constantly trying to edit, go back and edit, and I'm like this way when I'm teaching too. So like I'm constantly thinking about the words that I'm using, and I'm thinking about the word choice, and like what is the best way to communicate with people that don't even know about the subject to actually get an understanding of the things I'm thinking and talking about. And I think sometimes it can be kind of difficult because I think that like I have so much knowledge and information about certain things, at least at the professional level of being somebody that studies inequality for a living. It's just like, I want to be able to be understood and I want to be heard and I want to be heard fairly. Um, and it's like, I think part of that is, for me, I'm just kind of thinking about my training as an academic and how, like, when I'm being trained, it was like I was constantly being scrutinized for what I put out there. And it was constantly being like, yeah, like everything that you say needs to have evidence behind it. And it has to also have some kind of interpretation relating to the main idea that you're giving. And it's crazy because I even like took on teaching a methods class for a while, and after I taught research methods, it was like, okay, so I'm training you folks on how to actually like create a reasonable argument. And it's interesting because it's like you're training people to be reasonable and you're training people to be logical, but the thing is like when some of those kids go out into the wild, they're not going to be reasonable. And I think in general, we're all not perfect and we're not always going to be reasonable. But I mean, just coming from my perspective and just as somebody that values this as a way to kind of communicate, it's like I know that this won't always get the message across. And for me, it kind of feels like it's very isolating. And it feels like, I'm then while trying to then step outside of my comfort zone and trying to express who I am, it also then makes me feel like I'm trying in vain and I'm not actually getting the point across that I want across. So for me, like I just wanted to share that. Like, I wanted to share that, like, when I'm talking on any forum, I'm constantly thinking, what am I saying? How is it being said? What kinds of ways I'm like constructing what I'm saying? Am I using logic? Am I using stats? Am I using blah blah blah? Like, there's a lot of work that goes into like being able to communicate for me. And in general, like, of course, like, I don't always adhere to that because, again, I'm a person. Like, oh, it's like, oh, he's a professor and like he's a sociologist and he says things that are not based in reason. Oh my god, well, yeah, I'm a person. Like, I have opinions too that aren't based on facts, but the difference is I know what a fact versus opinion is. And I know that, especially in today's time, like, a lot of these things can be very, very difficult because, again, like, we live in a time where now facts versus opinions and ideas are very much the cornerstone of how we're interacting. I mean, look at the idea of the coronavirus and look at the idea of like how, like, because we're not looking at evidence and being able to understand what that is, we're running into problems in terms of how we're structuring our society and the way we deal with each other. So, I mean, it's kind of really disheartening for me, at least knowing that on that level, but also being able to think about it from a personal perspective. And it's really heartbreaking because it's like there's so much good that we could be doing, but the thing is, it's like, have like somebody like, in that works at the CDC explain it to some like random person on the street in terms of like, what is coronavirus, how does it work, how does this policy work, et cetera, et cetera. Imagine like how those conversations would go. I mean, I think that's why they heavily rely on these like community-based orgs to do a lot of this work for them. So, I mean, for me, it's like I'm being the message and the messenger at the same time. And I'm just thinking about these ideas of how I'm able to express myself. And, I wish I could say that, like, I'm able to communicate what I want effectively 100% of the time. But again, I can't. And I think for me, it's just remembering that, like, I cannot control what other people think. I cannot control what other people do. I can only be myself and just put what I can out there. And I just hope that maybe someone would connect with me. I mean, just as like I might think about this on my personal identity level as like, somebody who's brown, et cetera, et cetera. You can also think about it on this level of being able to talk to people and like being able to communicate and reason with them. And again, like, this is a hard skill. Communication's hard. I mean, think about your relationships with people and, like, think about some of the ways that maybe if you said something a different way, that other person might have responded to you. So I'm constantly, again, thinking about those things. And then not only that, but ultimately juggling, like, what are my goals with this communication? So, I mean, on a very personal level, it hits me. Like, I want to be able to communicate and express myself, but then I'm always having to use the language of others to do it. And again, for sometimes that can be very liberating, and then sometimes it can be very restraining. And so I just want to put it out there that, I'm doing the best I can. And, especially with this YouTube channel, like, I want to be able to put myself out there in a way that hopefully is understood and that you'll be able to kind of, reach out and, click like, share, and subscribe. And actually see if we can then communicate and hopefully bond about being just people, you know? So that's just my spiel on my communication secret. It's not that, I always communicate effectively 100% of the time, but it's just I'm human and I want to be understood and accepted. And I just do it in the way that I can. So that's just it. If you want to hear more about this, feel free to click like, share, and subscribe. So then that way we can sort of start building a community of people that do want to be accepted and do want to communicate and get their points across. Because at the end of the day, like, I just feel like we all want to be heard, and I just want to validate, who we are. Anyways, I hope this is the first of many videos. And you can tell I got the spaceware on, so hopefully that will be, part of our ability to then bolster communication as I'm trying to rectify the communication from the last video. And I feel like every YouTuber is entitled to a couple messy videos simply because they're just trying something out and they're new. So again, I hope to see you all later, and I hope we continue to make this a weekly thing. Anyways, I hope you have a great week. Take care.